Mike? Someone tell me what's happening, please. Oh, that looks hopeful.
Chairman, the stream is live.
Jeff Richardson has just joined the meeting. Yeah.
Excellent.
So you're now quorum. Okay.
Welcome then. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome everybody to the second virtual meeting of the CYPS panel. It's being held under the virtual regulations. We're using Microsoft Teams, but it has the same standing and validity as if we were in the town hall. We're streaming live on the internet now, and a recorded version will be available within 48 hours. If I could ask everyone to keep their microphones off unless they are speaking, and to switch off their mobile phones, which I will have to do in a minute. Councillors, I wonder if when you speak you could make sure that your video is on as well so the public can see who we are. That would be really useful. When you wish to speak, please use the chat function. Michelle will be monitoring the chat function, and please remember to switch your audio on when you want to say something in the chat function. If you're leaving the meeting and returning later, please use the chat function just to say I've got to go, and then say when you've come back. And finally, I would like to thank everybody who has been working with children and young people over these terrible times, officers and councillors and everybody in the community. There's been a huge step up to support all of those in the community, especially our children and young people. It's been wonderful. So any questions from councillors, officers about the process? Anyone? No? Great. Michelle, do you want to take a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll call the names of panel members, and if you could indicate you're present. Councillor Mark Applin? No. Councillor Cherry?
Present.
Councillor Cronolly?
Present.
Councillor Mark Crosby, we've had apologies. Councillor Hugh Gregor? No. Councillor Griggs?
Present.
Councillor Anne Harley? No. Councillor Steve Hogg, we've had apologies from. Councillor Nicola Holland?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ruth Jacobs? No. Councillor Stuart McQuillan, we've had apologies. Councillor Lisa Pilgrim, we've had apologies. Councillor Jeff Richardson?
Present.
Welcome.
Councillor Timothy Snadden?
Dawn Newton
is now exiting.
No. Councillor Richard Westwood? No. And the executive member, Councillor Catherine Gibbons?
Present. I just wanted to say I do have apologies from Councillor Westwood. He has an audit committee meeting.
Oh, thank you. And officers present. Would you like me to read the officers present?
Was I?
Councillor Hugh James.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry. And the officers present are Sheila Smith, Director, People and Communities, Carol Ann James, Interim Director, Children's Support and Safeguarding, Sally Varley, Service Leader, Strategic Planning, Governance, Catherine Stockall, Finance Business Partner, Michelle Chesterman, Democratic Services Electoral Services Officer, Cindy Dew, Senior Service Accountant, Corporate Services, Mike Riggle, Information ICT Security Manager, Dawn Newton, Service Leader, People and Communities, and if there's any other officers I've missed, if you could let me know, I'll include it in the attendance. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. If we move on to the agenda, do we have any members of the public that wish to speak, Michelle?
No public participation, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Any pecuniary interest declaration from councillors? No.
No comments in chat, Jim.
Thank you. Minutes. We need to approve the minutes of a correct record. I've got 2 comments to make. Obviously, the Ofsted Action Plan and Improvement Plan comes later on in the agenda. But just to tell people that there will be an all-member briefing on the SEND Action Plan in the near future. So that is on the minutes of the last meeting, and Mike Newman has been emailing me, and I'm sure. Sheila, would you like to add any more on that?
No, Chairman. No, thank you.
So I think that covers the actions in the previous minutes. Are we happy that they're a correct record? I propose they're a correct record. Anybody like to? Everyone agree? Would you like to say in the chat if you don't? Okay. Is that all right then, Michelle?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. Nothing referred by council or anybody else, is there, Michelle? I've had no notification.
No, Chairman.
No. Okay, on to item 6. Well, you've all had the report on what the Task and Finish group has been up to. I would like to thank officers for the enormous amount of work they are doing to put together the improvement plan, and the enormous amount of work they're doing liaising with other authorities, with the LGA and with the DFE, to make sure that this is put in place and is acted on. The Task and Finish group has been involved in looking at the draft improvement plan and the current one, and we are hoping that we'll have an LGA advisor joining the Task and Finish group in the near future to help us with our scrutiny. We are looking, well, I'm hoping that our advisor will sit in on a future children and young people scrutiny panel, and will sit in on our Task and Finish group to help us with our scrutiny. But it's a comprehensive report. Anybody got any more questions on what we've been doing?
Nothing in the chat, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the group members. It's been very interesting, and we've got work to do with the officers to scrutinise this and move this on. And thank you again to the officers. So moving on to the meat of the Children's Improvement Plan. If I can hand over, please, to Carol Ann James. Welcome again, Carol Ann, as I'm Interim Assistant Director. And over to you. I know I had a couple of questions. I don't think anybody else did, but if you'd like to say anything, to add anything.
Nothing in chat again, Chairman.
Hello.
Caroline?
Hello everybody. I'm Carol Ann James. I'm the Interim Assistant Director of Children's Services. The wider improvement plan has been provided in the papers, but what I wanted to do was just focus today on some of the key priorities that we're actually actively working on. It's a large plan. We can't do everything at once. We are doing many things at the same time. But the few areas that I just wanted to highlight in the report was about what we describe as the front door to children's services. So when somebody has a worry or a concern about a child, in whatever level of need they are concerned about it, it comes to one front door. We identify where that need is, we support so we can make sure we get the help at the earliest opportunity for that child and young person. And later on in the performance report, in the meeting here today, you'll see that we performance report on some of that front door. So we're working with our partners in practice, who are North Tyneside Council, with our partners across the statutory and voluntary sector here in North Somerset. And we have plans in place which are actually in train now. We're actually starting them so that we hope to have the first iteration of a more effective front door designed and implemented. It won't be the final edition, it will be the start by the end of January 2021. The second area is the early help. And again, early help is not advice and information. It is actually about how we support and help children and young people as problems emerge and as they start to escalate. And we work with our partners across the statutory and voluntary sector to try and help those families and children and families where there are needs at the earliest opportunity and stop the escalation where it's safe to do so. That doesn't mean to say if there are child protection concerns, we don't address them immediately. Of course we do. So we are working again to look at what our current offer is, which is stronger in the 0 to 5 than the 0 to 19. We know that. So we are looking to make sure that we focus and target on what the needs of North Somerset are, which will be in line with the national picture in some areas, but there will be more specific areas to North Somerset that we may have to have an increased need for or a different need for. So that's the area we're working on. And again, we're kind of building on what we have. We're undertaking that needs analysis I referred to. And by the end of January, we want to have a kind of at least a stronger early health offer identified and start to put some of that kind of areas in place. And that describes in there some of the tasks to achieve that. The last 2 areas we're currently working on are about our quality assurance performance framework, which from a scrutiny perspective helps you and ourselves know where we are, what we need to work on. And we also compare ourselves to the national picture and our statistical neighbours. And in the report, it shows you who, from a DFE perspective, we are identified as. So it's not always the Southwest region. It will be who are comparators to us in terms of size, population, etc. And we are kind of refreshing and updating that. And that will be the qualitative as well as some of the numbers and performative. I'll be stronger in that area, and we'll be able to report back to scrutiny, and you'll be able to quite appropriately challenge us and inquire on that. I see the question. If I just finish this last bit, then I can take the questions if I may. And the other one is what we call a corporate parenting panel, which is effectively where we are, as corporate parents, of which we are for those children in care and care leavers, how we can make sure that we have a strong, vibrant corporate parenting panel that meets the needs of those children that we are corporate parents to. We have started by one of the changes we've made. We're going to meet on a more frequent basis, and we're also adapting that panel so that we have children and young people actively involved in that and making sure the children's agenda is to the fore. So we've already made some of those changes, and there are more changes that we will have introduced by the time of our second meeting in December 20. So that's me to kind of a jog through there. I'm open to any questions that people would ask.
Thank you, Caroline. There's a lot of work being done and a lot going on there, so thank you very much. Michelle, do we have people in chat who would like to ask a question?
I think Councillor Richardson would like to ask a question.
Over to you, Councillor Richardson.
It's a question and a statement, really. So I wanted somewhere in this meeting to reiterate that as part of the health overview scrutiny panel, we'll be having a meeting with Avon and Wiltshire Mental Health Trust on the 17th of November at 9 o'clock. And that came about because we review their quality account, which was not brilliant. And we had a meeting with them, and the subject that shouted out from that meeting was children's mental health provision. So I just want to make sure that everybody, obviously it concerns SIPs as much as it concerns HOSP, but I was interested in what you were talking about, early health for the 0 to 5s and 0 to 19s. So that obviously cuts straight across that. And I just wondered what you were doing in regards to mental health in that respect. And indeed, it would be really interesting to find out what comes out of the needs analysis that you're doing that we could use in that meeting. So that was my question and my statement. So,
Caroline?
Chairman, if I may respond, is that Councillor Richardson, excellent answer, because it is a really significant issue, the emotional well-being of our children and families. It is a concern nationally. The concerns have gone up, and it is a concern for us locally here in North Somerset. We are working very closely with our health partners to identify what we have, and then through the needs analysis, what additionally we need. What is one part of our early health offer that I referred to is, as I speak, we are developing with our voluntary sector partners and our other partners a directory of what we currently have I'm sure that won't be 100% accurate because it will be an evolving document, but effectively so that we can make sure that that's published, so at least we know what we know around, and that will cover the areas of emotional well-being, mental health, substance misuse, parenting support, etc., etc. There are things available both nationally and locally that our children and families of North Somerset can access now, but not everybody is aware of that. It's not also easily accessible. So some of the work with our colleagues in health is about how we can make sure those pathways to access is effective, is accessible, and is well understood. And you're right, in our early help and in our children's social care area, we are working actively with those children and families and ensuring there is a wraparound support, and we're working with that. And every question we have with our children and families is, you know, how people are coping. And that's also the parents as well as the children, because some of our child protection issues are sometimes come about as the adult mental health need, not always the child, and then it kind of is a different effect. So I'm very happy for, you know, as things to progress, if you want any information from us to feed into your meeting, then I'm more than happy to help to let you know what we're doing and what we know so far. But it is something that is a high priority.
I was wondering maybe if you could attend the meeting in actual fact, because that would be really useful. I'll tell you the background of that, because basically if we talk to Avon and Wiltshire, they will say that their issue is that tier 1 and tier 2 isn't strong enough in terms of addressing mental health. Whereas I think if you talk to the council, I get the impression that they think that Avon and Wiltshire aren't good enough because you can't refer to them and get people in. So my only issue, well, it's not an issue, my only objective in this is to get those two sides together. And I just want to be somebody who can allow those two groups to speak together and get whatever is best for the children, not otherwise. You know, because obviously there's a disconnect there somewhere between the two bodies. So I know it's not just us, it's not just AWP, it's however that system doesn't work at the moment for the children. So if like,
I'm able to,
very welcome.
If I'm able to attend, I'm more than happy to attend. I'll check that out with the timescales and come back to you. The other thing that I would want to say, that is a conversation I have later today, is about looking at putting some emotional wellbeing support in our schools as an early help offer. So we are working with Via Health, which is that lower level of support that some of our schools already have that. That's something that schools have been doing for some years, but it's about concentrating on that. So there's some conversations going, because as you say, in terms of the areas aren't as acute that require the child and adolescent mental health services, what we traditionally call CAMS. For some, it's not. You're right. It's the lower levels. And the other thing, just for you to be aware, with our children in care and our care leavers, we undertake what we call strength and difficulty questionnaires with them, which is about emotional well-being. And we undertake those kind of work with our children and young people on a regular basis, so that we know where things are and what we need to focus on. So that's an element of the needs analysis I'm talking to you about. But there is work going on in schools, which is hopefully it'll be a reassuring to you. And I'll come back to you if I may about if I'm able to move things to attend with you.
And you're probably aware that the CCG are setting up school teams, and one of those teams will be in North Somerset. Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you. That was a really good bit of conversation about our children's mental health. And if you could send Caroline the details of that meeting, and then she can check it out. Thank you very much indeed. Michelle, is there anybody else in chat who would like to speak?
Councillor Gibbons would like to speak as well, Chairman.
Councillor Gibbons.
Thank you. I was going to mention about our work with care leavers as well, but also I would welcome coming to this meeting if possible, Jeff.
Your mic's on, Jeff.
Of course, you'll be more than welcome.
Yeah, thank you, because it builds on some of the work we've done on the Health and Wellbeing Board as well. So I mean, this is an ongoing problem with children's mental health for as long as I've been a counsellor. So yeah, definitely, I'm committed to that.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really good idea if we invited anybody. I mean, as I said, it's as much a SIPS issue as a health issue. So if we are try and get everybody from SIPS invited as well. What would also be useful is, I know you're doing the needs analysis now, that's exactly what we need. We need to bring to the table what the issues are at the moment and hopefully identify those we can address quite quickly by combining the skills and budgets, I guess, of health and social services.
Thank you very much. Yes, Jeff, please do that so that the SIPS members can, thank you very much. Michelle, anybody else in chat?
No other questions in chat, Chairman.
Thank you. I think this is something that we're going to be revisiting quite often, and any information that you can get out to the panel during the next few months would be good, Carol Ann. And I know you'll be linking into with the Task and Finish group. Thank you very much then. So if we can move on to item 7, and I think Sally, you around? Or is it Sheila?
I am around, thank you. Yes, I am. So this is an item about a potential expansion of Ravenswood Special Schools. So the purpose of the report today is to raise the panel's awareness of a wish subject to the Executive Member for Children agreeing that we can commence consultations to consider an expansion of Ravenswood Special School. As members are aware, we have a range of consultations and changes that are in place at the moment to meet the needs of children with special educational needs. We have a live consultation with Baytree School, but we've also had some good successes in the fact that we've got an ASD hub that's opened at Nailsea School this September for 10 children with high functioning autism. We have another consultation that's live with Mendick Green Primary School for another hub for children, high functioning children with autism at Mendick Green. And we also have open from last September and this September, both infant provision and sixth form provision at West Haven Special School. So this is a continuation of the need to provide more special educational needs places. An opportunity has arisen because some facilities have become available in Nailsea, adjacent to the Ravenswood School site, to enable them to have some extra accommodation so that they could actually increase their capacity. Because of COVID, I think we're probably not as far ahead as we would have wanted to be with this particular consultation, because there are some works we need to do in terms of the buildings that we haven't been able to do because we haven't been able to get onto site necessarily. But the hope is that with the consultation period as well, we want to take the school's capacity from between 112 and 119 places, depending on the needs of the children in the school, to 140 or 150 places. And so we're asking for your support in part of that overall strategy to meet the needs of children with SEND more within the community of North Somerset, and actually support us in starting the consultation with the public and with key stakeholders to see if that is something that, if has support and approval, will be submitted to the executive in April for a final determination. I can answer questions on the report. Hopefully it's fairly self-explanatory, so if anybody has any questions, then please do come back to me.
I have one question, Sally. There is a public footpath that goes between Ravenswood School and the unit that we're looking at, hopefully, to bring into Ravenswood School. Is it going to be? Is it still there? Is it going to be possible to divert the public footpath? What's happening there?
So
the question.
Yeah, the parcel of the building is actually part of the Ravenswood site. So we often refer to it as part of the semi-detached element of Ravenswood, which was part of the Ravenswood site and part of the Voyage Learning Campus site. So by knocking down a couple of walls internally, we can actually bring it all together. There is a public right-of-way that goes bang through the middle of Ravenswood School and separates their sort of primary age from their secondary age. I think many people have tried to see if we can divert that public right of way, but it hasn't been possible to date. If there are possible further reviews of the site, then that's something I think we will continue to look into, but we obviously have to respect public right of ways as well.
Thank you very much. Michelle, anybody in the chat?
Questions from Councillor Connolly and Councillor James, Chairman.
Sorry, I missed the first one. Who was the first one?
Councillor Connolly, Chairman, and Councillor James.
Councillor Connolly, over to you.
Perfect. I just want to say it's really brilliant to hear we're expanding our kind of capacity to take on special school places. Obviously, I know you want the support from SIPs. I'm fairly certain everybody will support it, so I will propose that we SIP shows their support for the expansion of this. My question is, obviously, there's a lot of demand for places. So if we do and this comes through and you get the expansion, how much more places do we think we'll need to meet the demand for special educational needs?
So I think the overall demand is huge, and I think that it's nothing that we can actually, this is a small part in a journey of a much wider programme to actually meet the needs of children with special education needs within North Somerset. And one of the issues we have at the moment is that actually we're not actually given any funding, any capital funding for SEND. So that is a huge concern and something that as officers we've been raising with the Department for Education. I think we're all kind of hopeful that there may be some announcements in the spending reviews, but obviously the nation is in a unusual place at the moment, and we need to await those outcomes. So as officers, we have been stressing to the Department for Education that there does need to be more resources. I think if we can start to progress some of the changes with Baytree, and if we have got the changes in place now at Westhaven with some of the hubs, there is further work that needs to be done to see how that can meet demand. But we have over 200 children that are accessing education outside of North Somerset, and the numbers of children are increasing, and our aim is to try and bring those children back into North Somerset and provide provision locally of a high standard that meets the needs of our children and young people.
Thank you, thank you. And Councillor James, you had a question.
Brilliant. Yeah, it was mostly just on point 8.2, which is noting the need not to reduce the experience of existing students too much by expanding it. I just wanted to emphasise that, just because I went to Ravenswood and visited just as they were closing down their library to fit more students in. So just to, whilst we've got 200 people going out of area, stressing will this affect their experience even more, or will this have a negligent effect on the current experience of students, mostly library going, stuff like that? It's really sad to see.
Yeah, so the piece of work that we had actually initiated just before COVID was that we have undertaken surveys of two of our special schools, Westhaven and Ravenswood, to ascertain the number of children that can be satisfactorily educated in those schools without compromising the education of other children. Because quite rightly, the last thing you want to do is to over allocate places and then actually affect the ability of the children at the school already to have the experience and the education that they need. So we have, as a result, one of the reasons that the report gives a range is that we are working with the head teacher and with the consultant that we actually employed to undertake that piece of work to ascertain, and hopefully it's something we can do during the consultation period before it goes to the exec, how many children we can actually satisfactorily educate within Ravenswood. And we're using a basis known as BB 104. It's a building bulletin that's provided by the government that gives the range of physical capacity that should be available to enable children to be able to reach their potential within the school buildings that they're in. So one of the things going alongside this is to make sure that the actual capacity and the facilities at Ravenswood are fit for purpose for the numbers of children. And that's why there's a small request at the bottom for a small amount of money to be able to maybe make some internal modifications to make sure that the right facilities are there for all of the children that will be as part of that increase in capacity.
That's really good, especially with the social distancing measures at the moment. I know that teachers at Ravenswood and all the staff at Ravenswood are working so hard to try and just make sure that students are, that they do get a satisfactory life at the moment. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sally. I think as Kieran said, we all support this and we all give this our support and look forward to the consultation and the final decision. Are there any more questions in chat, Michelle?
No more questions in chat, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much, Sally. There's a huge list in that report of what is being done for our SEND children. It's a really, I've got 7 items that I could note, and we've got the new school coming on in 2024. So I think it's really exciting. Well, let's wait and see if we can get any money from the government as well. Thank you very much then, Sally. Moving on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. On to item 8, the budget monitor. And Catherine, I think you may want to comment on one or two things, perhaps, or perhaps not.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Morning, everybody. So this is the usual budget monitoring report that we bring to you. This is the report that provides details as at the end of month 5. And this, together with reports from all the other parts of the council, was presented to the executive last week. So clearly we're in very unusual times, and this is having a very significant financial impact across all directorates of the council, actually. But particularly in children's services. So this report shows the variances against the budget, as we have noted at the end of month 5, and it's showing that we have an overall projected overspend of just over £1.5 million. Now, a vast majority of that, getting on for 80% of that, is related to the COVID pandemic. Much of that relates to income losses, some additional social care costs, and some MTFP savings that we think we may not be able to deliver, partly because of capacity. So the table, which is on page 2, shows the main areas where we are reporting a forecast overspend, and just say a few words about a couple of them. So placements for looked after children. Actually, we're doing quite well on placements for looked after children. So despite us showing an overspend, actually our forecast spend in this year is only around about £117,000 more than in the previous year. And given where we are with placement numbers and inflation and cost pressures, actually that's not a bad position at all. The next big area is disabled children's placements, and there's certainly been a COVID impact there, where we've seen more needs, more complex needs, sometimes for children who aren't able to be in school. And then there are 2 particular areas which relate to losses of income. So our early birds nursery relies heavily on income from private fee-paying parents, which clearly hasn't been forthcoming in the early part of this year, and to an extent for all of this financial year. And the same applies to the music service, where our income from schools for music tuition has been foregone in much of the early part of this year, although we have been able to recoup some of that through the coronavirus job retention scheme. So those are the main areas in the children's services budget in the general fund of the council. I think one other thing I would just probably want to mention, which is towards the back of the report, which talks about the dedicated schools grant, and I guess it kind of reflects on Sally's previous item about SEND placements. So the dedicated schools grant, which funds all of the education budget, members will be aware that we had a large deficit carried forward from last year, and we are forecasting an increase in that deficit, largely as a result of placements of children out of areas, as Sally referred to. So, our commissioning strategy in relation to SEND, commissioning more places is vital in terms of trying to manage the deficit on the dedicated schools grant. So I think that's all I'd want to say, but I'm very happy to take questions, and colleagues also.
Thank you very much. A complex document, and we always have an overspend, and I solve it. Well, how does one solve it? I do not know. Anyway, any questions in the chat, Michelle?
No questions in the chat, Chairman.
Well, I just hope we can find that bit of money for Ravenswood somewhere in the budget, and just keep trying the government and see what SSF does, and so on and so forth. But it's not going to go away. We can only do our best. Thank you very much, Catherine. Moving on from something that is a bit depressing with the finances, Caroline James, over to you for the performance monitoring report. And I think you said to me earlier that the design of this may change in the future, if I remember rightly.
That's absolutely correct, Chairman. What I'd like to say is this is the presentation, but with all of the work that we've just talked about in Children's Improvement Plan, and I just said earlier on, is that I'm hoping for the next time we have scrutiny to have a slightly different format of report that I think will be a little bit more kind of helpful to be able to understand in the direction of travel we're going positively and negatively and what we're doing about it. So I'll be a bit more interactive in that way. What I just want to highlight into there is in terms of in the period of 2020 so far, is that there have been a number of inspections. People be aware that the Ofsted currently are doing what they're called assured visits to local authorities to assure themselves that during this coronavirus that things are okay, because there was a period they weren't inspecting. We haven't been identified yet, but things are moving apace and some of our neighbouring authorities have had them. So that could happen at any point in time. In terms of the schools, it refers to which schools have had and what the outcomes were. And then a summary in there of what our kind of gradings are for our schools here in North Somerset. Going into the performance of children's services, I think what I wanted to highlight in some of the areas where, you know, of strength are areas where basically things are going in the right direction. I'd start on some of the positives. The areas around the rates of our children in care are going in the right direction. Taking the point that Catherine was saying earlier on, that's where we are now. It's a national issue. We don't know what the demand's going to be. None of us know how long this pandemic situation is going to be around. So there is a risk that the demand on children's services, both at the front door for needing the whole level of the continuum need, plus children in care, could go. We're working very hard to keep our numbers at the level which are lower than our statistical neighbours and national picture. But, you know, the future is something that we've all got to keep an eye open for. Our care leavers are in suitable accommodation, and we are significantly higher than both the national England rate and the South West region, so that we're in Q1 that we've just had earlier this year, we were at 94.2%. So that's really positive, and that ties into some of the areas about placements we were talking about. We're having a real ensuring that our young people are in regulated, high quality placement that meet their needs. So it's been a great deal of work that happened preceding, you know, me coming into North Somerset and since I've been here, and we have plans for going forward. I think the other area that's quite a positive area saying is about North Somerset foster carers, which is a local indicator, but we are increasing the number and we have a plan for next year to increase them further. That is so much better for our children and young people if we can have them close to home. We are looking also how we kind of enhance our skills and experiences of our foster carers so that they can take those more complex children that traditionally we have had to place out of the area. So I think that's kind of the areas. I think what I would just again to identify some of the areas that are not so quite good, the children and young, our care leavers in employment, education and training. And I think that's a challenge in a number of areas, in both the pandemic, the furlough scheme, the austere times we're in and we're going farther into, that some of our vulnerable young people who perhaps their timeline is slightly different to those children who perhaps aren't in care or haven't had to come in care for the reasons why children would be in care, in the sense that, you know, they're competing against people with perhaps very good qualifications, very good family supports over and above what we do as corporate parenting. I think what I want to say is that we're working very hard on that. We've done a needs analysis of that as a piece of work that has been working across the service with our colleagues in the virtual school and the school inclusion service at the moment, and the 16+ support, plus within children's services, some of my service areas. So what we're doing is looking to see what we've got and what can we do differently. So we're thinking about drop-ins, we're thinking about having areas across the children and family hubs in the early help, to having some areas where we can do some employment training work with young people. So whilst I'm not able to give you a full picture of what that kind of plans are in detail, what I can tell you is we're worried about it, and we have a lot of energy and time into what is the situation and how can we improve it. We're also looking at some of our other authorities across the UK to see, you know, what are they doing, how they've been successful. Is anything learning for us there as well to do things differently? But I think it also has to be taken in that very difficult world that we're all currently living in, and the young people. And I think just differentiating is that some is about school ready, so they may not be in education and employment training, but we're confident that they're ready to get that way. And I think there's two kind of areas you're looking at about. Those are in there, and they're what we're doing to skill up people ready to do that. I think just some of the other areas I just want to highlight there are areas of child protection too. Our numbers are quite low. They're lower than, and they've been at lower trends. And that doesn't mean to say that we are making sure that we have the right children in the right place. So we have reviewed in the last month all of our children open to children's services. Because of the pandemic and the period of lockdown, the world changed significantly in that first few months. So we reviewed all of them to make sure that we are working with the right children and they are in the right place. And we've taken action to address that. So we only have 85 children, and the same are children in need. And just to clarify that, there is a statutory definition. There are different interpretations of that, but the Department for Education asked us to report on it. And they are children in need who are at the level of need that require statutory intervention, as opposed to children in need that might be, you know, in effect, every child is in need, you know, in honesty. But in the early health world, there will be children in need, but a different level. So it's about whether or not there needs a duty on the statutory intervention to either investigate or intervene. And that's how we define it. These children are deemed to be investigate or intervene, a child in need. The other thing that's really, really positive and we're working on is about the children who are placed in foster care, in a family-placed placements, as opposed to residential care. Sometimes residential care is the right place for children and young people. It's not always not, but it's about a needs assessment. It's a child's needs and wishes, not about the placement need. And we have 62% in Q1 are in foster placements. We're working hard, as I've said, to make that more an in-house, but if they're not in-house, they're in independent fostering areas. Unfortunately, a large amount of those independent fostering agencies are outside the North Somerset, but as many as we can, they're on the borders. So actually they are accessible to us. What I would want to assure the Scrutiny Committee that wherever the child is placed, we, North Somerset, visit those children, review those children, manage those children. They're not
parked
out of the end. They are North Somerset children wherever they're placed, whether that be Scotland, South. Sometimes children are placed out the area from a safety perspective. It's not always not having the placement. I think the other area I just want to pick it up in is about the area of missing children. We're doing a great piece of work at the moment. So again, reporting will be slightly different. And there have been in Q1 116 episodes, and episodes means there's a time limit of how long they're missing. And then those are 48 young people that make up those 116 episodes. And 18 of those 48 are children in care. There are our children, so to speak. The other ones, so we've got a piece of work that's in train at the moment to look at all children missing from home, from care and from school, working with our partner colleagues, health and police, to basically have a very robust monitoring on those. We'll be monitoring those children from outside North Somerset that are placed in North Somerset, either in family situations or in care situations, so that we are actually really on top of it, and we are working to make sure we know who those children are. And what I will be wanting to report to Scrutiny is slightly different on that, so that you can understand what that cohort is, what we're doing about it, and a bit more than just telling you an episode. So what are we talking about? How many overnight? How length of time? So you'll be able to challenge back on that. The last area that I just want to say is very briefly is about child sexual exploitation. We have a big piece of work undertaken at the moment in something described as contextualised safeguarding, and that covers things like county lines, prevent, which is the radicalisation, the child sexual exploitation, child at risk of criminal exploitation, all of those areas, missing children. So we are working very closely with our colleagues. We have Research in Practice, which is a very well-regarded research organisation that is a national organisation that is being funded by the Department for Education to support some authorities on getting together with their contextualised safeguarding. We have one of the best trainers in the world coming and doing some work with some of our staff, Caroline Firmin, and she's worked with many other authorities. And we also are doing some work with our schools to help them, working directly with young people through St Giles's Trust to help understand what are those risks, how grooming happens, so that we can kind of help young people to do that. And in our contextualised safeguarding, one area we'll be working with is for the parents, because contextualised safeguarding is areas at the external impact. So sometimes parents just can't manage the situation. They're as worried about their children as we are, and they are not contributing to their child's risk. They are actually, it's out of control, from their control. So we will be working with parents to do that. So that's kind of everything I've said, and I'm open to any questions that I may be able to answer for you.
Thank you, Caroline. Certainly, if you look at the Ofsted report we got, I went through with a highlighter. There's an awful lot in there that's positive. An awful lot that's in there is positive. It's a habit I've done many times in the past. So if you can do that, you'll see how much positive work is going on in North Somerset already. And in a way, it seems a bit unfair that we got that judgment. And there's so much that is there that's already good. So anyway, Michelle, open to questions. Anybody got their hand up?
Yes, we've got comments from Councillor Connolly, Councillor Cherry.
Right. Let's go with Councillor Connolly first.
Yeah, it was just a really quick point on the care leavers who are education, employment or training. Obviously, you're reviewing that and things. It's just wondering whether we maybe look at the Kickstarter scheme and see if there's any support that might capture care leavers in there. I know there's a set criteria, but it's just always worth double checking.
Absolutely, and that's one of the areas that we are looking at the moment. But effectively, we're looking at all of the things available to us now and what we can do. So it is something that, there is actually a report came back to me late last night, so I haven't had a chance to read it, or I'd be able to tell you a bit more. But it's basically work in progress, but progress at real pace. It's not kind of something drifting. So certainly at the next scrutiny committee, I'll be able to give you a much more impactful kind of update of where we're on, if that'd be helpful.
Caroline, you may not know that we have two youth champions as councillors. Kieran and Hugh are our youth champions, and certainly I know they're quite keen to fulfil a role and not just be a namesake. So you may want to make a note of that. Thank you then. Is that okay, Kieran? Yep. Okay, Caroline, next over to you.
Thank you very much. That's absolutely, it was really interesting to hear all the progress that has been made, and I'm really impressed because I'm glad that so much research is going into this. I appreciate that times are extraordinarily difficult with COVID, and one of the things that has concerned me is that because of lockdown, there is an undoubted increase in domestic violence and its impact on children, especially if, everybody is all in the same house and children being moved around. So I do think that domestic abuse is incredibly important in terms of its impact on children. And I saw that it's not targeted on, it says on part of, in that report at one point. Did you see that on page 3? It talks about it. So I just wonder what steps could we do to work perhaps with ASH, that's Adult Social Housing, and trying to monitor domestic abuse and work about its impact on children effectively and their education. How are we going to, what can we do with schools? How can we address domestic abuse? Thank you.
It's a very valid point, and I didn't skip over it lightly. I think there's three things I'd want to say. One is the front door. When we get that right, which is going at pace, as you said, there will be an area of multi-agency kind of support in there, which it currently is under the one front door, but we will kind of go wider than domestic abuse, and it will be ensuring in there, and we will have kind of IDFAs and people which are in, people advocates for domestic abuse, specialist domestic abuse workers. So we will be making sure that we're getting that, and where the early help needs to happen, if basically it doesn't require a statutory intervention or an investigation from a children's social care perspective, it might in an early help. So that will be area is very much in there, and we're also talking with the police about screening it. So we've been talking with the police about the PCSOs, who are the police community support officers in the police. So when they're opening and talking with families of where they visited, so how that information can come to light. So we've already had those conversations, and we're working that, and that will be again running around the front door. The second area is the joined up area about adults. You're saying is we are working across the council and with our partners to join up how we work effectively with domestic abuse, both in terms of what we're currently doing and making sure it's much more joined up rather than working in a silo perspective, because it's very important so we don't miss those opportunities. So on the adult side, if there's children under 18, then children are involved, or if children under 18 come across maybe a grandmother that's living in the area that's vulnerable. So we will kind of work along that area. And part of the needs analysis that I was referring to earlier on as part of the Children's Improvement Plan, domestic abuse is the main feature, because domestic abuse, mental health, substance misuse are key features that affect our cohort of open to children services, in some way, shape or form. They are major features, and there may be kind of secondary responses. And so that's kind of the area. I know we'll have a domestic abuse strategy that we are joined up and we're all working together. And from that will be some of the needs about what work we need to do with children and young people, and what we can do with our schools through PHSE and other support areas. And we will target those schools that need it, as opposed to all schools as a priority. We might do all schools, but we'll start with ones where we're already identifying a lot of those children and families are vulnerable in that school area. And we will be joining up with our health colleagues, because they're ambulance staff who identify this, as housing staff who go in. And what we'll be doing is making sure that we all understand each other's business and how we work together. So you're absolutely right, the joining up is critical. And then we will also be developing some of we're working already on what we call the perpetrators groups, which are not solely male, but a higher percentage is male. So we were doing some work at that at the moment. So what we've got available for those men, there's another grant that we got called Reducing Parental Conflict, and we built a grant in last year that we're working to expand across our partnerships and across children's services, the understanding of how you reduce parental conflict, which is a lower level domestic abuse. Effectively, it's about parental conflict. And then we're going to have train the trainers. So we're going to cascade that learning down so we can build from there. So there's the perpetrators program and that, and then, as I say, working with the children. So there's a lot of work in train. It's not as joined up yet as it needs to be. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But what I can assure you is, if we know of any child where there is a concern that there may be domestic abuse or there is domestic abuse, it comes into our front door and we respond immediately to it. And the police respond from a blue light perspective.
Thank you very much.
You're on mute, Wendy.
Councillor Gibbons would like to ask a question as well, Chairman.
So it was Councillor Jeff Richardson first.
He's withdrawn his question now.
I was Wendy, but it's just been answered, so don't worry.
Councillor Gibbons.
Lovely, perfect. Councillor Gibbons, over to you.
Yes, the debate has kind of moved on from what I put my hand up to speak on. I was just going to go back to what Councillor Cronolly was saying about Kickstart and skills and education for our care leavers and young people more widely in North Somerset, to just tell the panel that we have had a preliminary meeting with Councillor Cronolly and Councillor James as our youth champions with the team who deal with skills, because that falls in my portfolio as well. It's one of those areas that covers a number of, I'd say, directorates, you know, skills, education, etc. And yes, we will definitely be working actively to make sure that our care leavers get opportunities within the council, possibly as internships or work experience, and with the wider community. We're going to be doing a consultation and possibly, hopefully, a question and answer session on Facebook that we'll get the young people themselves to come to and be able to talk to advisors, to Councillor Kieran and Councillor Hugh James as well, and anybody else who feels that they have some input in terms of advice. And thank you.
That's good to know. That's good to know. Michelle?
And Councillor Cherry, if you'd like to ask a question.
Hang on a minute, there's something going on. There's some echoing going on. Right, okay, over to you, Councillor Cherry. Are we all right?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm really impressed by that about the care leavers. I just wondered, have we looked at the idea of mentoring schemes? Because I've heard a lot about mentoring in other authorities, and I do think there are a lot of people now working from home. A lot of people want to help children, and they feel, because their work-life balance has changed perhaps because of the pandemic, and they've seen the inequality with the free school meals fiasco. I think people want to help children, and maybe a mentoring scheme might work. What do we think?
Caroline, would you like to answer that?
I think it's an excellent idea. Having been relatively new here in North Somerset, I'm not aware that we've started one, but certainly it's one of the ideas. You're right. There are many authorities, both through members, through officers across the council, and that's to do that. So if there's something in, we'll further develop it, and if not, then we will introduce it. Sheila's going to answer. She'll know more than me. She's been here much longer.
Over to you, Sheila.
Sorry, so I just wanted to say, whilst we don't have a specific one for care leavers, we do have a mentoring scheme that's Junction 21, and indeed we did have a couple of members who were mentors back in the day, and so that is available and accessible for young people. So I just wanted to say that is there, but in terms of something specific for care leavers, no, not yet. We do also have a mentoring scheme through our high impact families, which is more of a coaching scheme, but that's broader and that's for families. So that's the background. But as Caroline said, obviously we are in a state of re-looking at things and developing some new aspects to our services.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Thank you. It's all happening, isn't it? Michelle, who else would like to speak if they haven't their question answered already?
Councillor Holland and Councillor Gibbons.
Councillor Holland, over to you.
Hi, with regard to the mentoring schemes that are all available, and they're all fantastic, one of the things that could be utilised is our sixth formers. I feel that peer mentoring is very, very important. A lot of children will not listen to an adult, will not take on board what adults tell them, and especially with regard to any kind of grooming that's going on. It's really, really important that children get a chance to actually appreciate from their own age group, from people who are just 2 or 3 years older than them. They will actually take on board what those people say, rather than somebody, this sort of 50-year-old woman who they look at as, grandma, and say, you've no idea what things are like nowadays. And truth is, I don't. So I just wonder if we can get the secondary schools involved and get any of the sixth formers involved.
Thank you. Carol, what do you think?
Councillor Holland, that's many schools have those peer mentors. Again, that's something we can talk with our schools to do. I think just I'd say about the St Giles Trust, I was talking about some of the work exploitation in school. They're actually people with lived experience. So they're younger people, they are adults, but they are people who've had lived experience as opposed to people who perhaps have theoretical experience, and they have been quite impactful. But you're absolutely right that the peer mentoring schemes within schools, and some of the schools go down into year 11 and year 10, and they're very impactful too. So we're about to talk to our schools on a number of issues, including the St Giles. So I'm happy to kind of explore that with them and recommend that. I think it's an excellent idea. And I think the Junction 21 that Sheila talked, which is kind of supporting it is very effective, very impactful, and through our youth offending services, where currently they support them, and that's been very helpful. But it's expanding it, as you say. So excellent ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you.
There's some background noise. Can people turn their mic off if they're not talking? Thank you very much. Michelle, who's next? Michelle? Have a look.
Councillor Gibbons, Chairman, would like to speak.
Councillor Gibbons, over to you.
Hello, I've been beaten to it again. I was going to mention the same St Giles and Junction 21, which when I was on what was the Children's Champion panel in the past, a number of us were involved in the mentoring scheme then. So I think possibly it's just a matter of raising its profile and getting more people involved with that, because it does exist. And in terms of peer mentoring, yes, that's something I seem to remember we did discuss at one of the meetings we have with the schools leaders. And I know some schools have been in place, but we could possibly, in terms of our care leavers, maybe involve some of the local university students as well, who might well be practiced in giving peer support to their fellows, and I think there might be another avenue to explore there. Oops, it's all going on. Thank you.
Thank you then. That's another thought for you, Caroline. Another thought for you. Michelle, anyone else?
No more comments in the chat, Chairman.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that, Caroline. A very extensive and in-depth report, and I think we look forward to the new version next time, which might be more helpful to us in understanding some of the situations that make up that data. That would be really good. So thank you very much. Thank you. Michelle, it's over to you for the forward plan.
Okay, so the forward plan is attached for information and comment from members. The date for the briefing session on the 0 to 19 public health nursing procurement contract has now been confirmed as Tuesday the 17th of November between 1 to 2:30, and this will provide members of SIPS and HOSP panels an update on the process of procurement of the 0 to 19 public health nursing service, and an opportunity for both panels to contribute views regarding the design of the service. Another thing to mention is that a revised format for the work plan has been developed, with the idea that it should be used by all panels to provide a uniform approach. I know HOSP is using the new work plan format at the moment, and it will provide for the forward planning of agendas for the coming year, and will be a useful record of panel activity.
That would be good.
Yeah. So that would be. Yeah.
I think joined up thinking is really important across the council and across the panel. So I think that's a really good move forward. I think somebody had their hand up. Hugh, Councillor Hugh James. Muted. Unmute.
Clever, it's my turn this time. I was just going to ask about home to school transport. Obviously, it's not in.
I have an answer. Hang on. Where's my answer? I've been in discussion with the home to school transport team, and because I know it's been a really hot potato, home to school transport, over the last 6 weeks. So what I can report is there's a steering group that's been set up, including the leader of the council, I'm glad to say, the chief exec, and they're looking at an improvement plan to rebuild confidence in the home to school transport services. The steering group is urgently, and I think we're very pleased to hear that word in there, urgently driving a series of exercises to understand the systems, decisions, resources, safeguarding measures, data management and leadership provided by the services. And there is a working group that's meeting quite regularly, and I've asked for a briefing. The CYPS, actually I've asked for a briefing for all members, because we've all been, not all of us, but many of us have been contacted by residents in January. So that's an update on what is happening. It is being worked very hard in the background, and we should hear, hopefully, a report in January once they've completed this really complex exercise. But believe me, it's being looked at. So yeah,
that's very good.
They give me some data which I was interested in. 2,600 pupils are transported across 170 routes. So it is quite a complex exercise. So yeah, thank you for asking that question. They're on the case, and we should hear the results of this big investigation in January.
Okay, so January is when we're expecting it. And the only other question I had was on this, that was our parents being involved in that working group? Because obviously the voice of, or at least for us, we attended this meeting with SEND parents. Their voice was really valuable. Are they going to get an opportunity to meet with
I think me is that group. I think Kenton Me is part of the group.
Okay, that's good.
Who managed the parent? Oh, no, not managed. That's the wrong word. Kenton Me is part of the group because, of course, the SEND parents were very, very vocal about home to school transport. So yes, they are trying to include everybody who needs to have a voice on that in that meeting. So
brilliant.
Thank you for
and
that.
The other thing was, we discussed this before this meeting, but in item 5 for the possible areas for consideration, youth services and youth engagement, would it be possible for us to set up a working group for that with the youth champions, with Catherine and with Wendy and anyone else who would be interested?
Well, I'm a bit ancient, Hugh. How about somebody else people who are a bit younger? Anyway, that's just a thought.
Fair enough.
Over to you, Catherine. You obviously weren't going to say that. Muted? Oh, good. Catherine?
Oh, hi. Sorry. Yes, I wasn't sure that you'd called on me to speak. Yes. So, is anybody who's older than you ruled out for these things? Then we're all have to go home.
Well, having authority figures on board is very useful because obviously, if they're to do anything meaningful, it needs buy-in from all parties. There we are.
Yeah, no, it does, absolutely. And in terms of the home to school transport particularly, yes, Kenton's part of the group. And I can say, in all honesty, I'm in contact with a large number of the parents, particularly, as you'll not be surprised, those who've had issues, and there are a number. I think there are 1 or 2 parents who would certainly be eager and able to join such a group. But I mean, one of the parents I talk to often is actually part of I think she's the secretary of Kenton's group. So I mean, she will probably be joining along with Kenton anyway and feeding the views of the SEND parents to the group. But I think it's a good idea if we could invite others to perhaps come and speak to us.
Thank you.
Periodically.
Yeah.
Yeah, rather than being permanent members. It's
certainly a group that's going to achieve things. I feel very confident because all the stakeholders are part of the group. So yeah. And exactly. As far as your working group goes, Hugh, yes.
Brill, that's good.
Yeah, I'm happy to join. I can self-identify as young.
Thank you very much. Michelle, did anybody else have any comments on the work plan?
Yes, I think Sheila Smith wanted to talk here, and I think your camera's gone off. I don't know if there's a problem with your camera.
Oh, goodness knows. Sheila, over to you. Oh, yes.
Sorry, mine wasn't about the work plan. I was actually going to say exactly what Councillor Gibbons has said, so I won't repeat that. But I will just say because you made the announcement about the 0 to 19, I did want to draw members' attention to the fact that we are planning a presentation of our Bright Spots survey. This is a survey that goes out to all of our children and young people who are in our care, and we hear from them through that about their experiences and what they think is working well and what they think we need to improve. And we've been doing it a number of years. And so even though it was during lockdown, and it's normally completed by a child through designated teachers at school, actually foster carers and others stepped in. And so the results are going to be available on a Zoom meeting on Tuesday, the 10th of November, from 1 o'clock till 2:30. I am going to send out an invitation to all members, but I just wanted to give this scrutiny panel the heads up, because the meeting will also have designated teachers, foster carers and social workers involved, when they will then be looking to see what we need to improve for children around their experiences of being in our care. So it's just an early flag, but I will be sending it out to all members in their role as corporate parents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. And that I think it's important that us members actually go along and listen to what people say. So yes, do please send it out, and I might. Yes, it's important. Thank you. Then, anybody else on the forward plan?
Can't see any other comments in chat, Chairman.
Well, I think we've covered an awful lot. There's an awful lot going on, and I think if we councillors, we members can assist any more in any way with the work that officers are doing, please let us know, because we all want to move on with this. But as I said earlier, there's a lot of good things happening, and it's not that the council is failing. It's not. There's a lot of good things happening, but we're just moving on so that everything is good. So thank you to everybody, and Hugh, you've raised your hand. I was about to say thank you and goodbye.
Brilliant. Well, if it's just okay to butt in before the goodbye, is it just possible for you to, as chair, to stress to group leaders to send substitutes if possible? I think we were almost undone by that this meeting. So, if at all possible, could you relay that message?
I will ask our group leader to do that, because I think it's been really worrying to me. But never mind, we are in public at the moment, so I will say no more, but I will stress we do need substitutes. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day despite the rain. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
And bye.
Thank you.